Welcome to the Explainer. We often assume that the secret to doing well in school is the same everywhere. But what if a core idea, like believing in yourself, is a huge deal in one country but barely matters in another? Well, today we are diving into an incredible 2024 study that looks at exactly that, and it shows how culture can totally change the game when it comes to learning science. So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about the bigger picture, this global issue of keeping students hooked on science. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how this study was actually put together. After that, we'll jump right into the juicy findings, especially this wild difference between Finland and Japan. And finally, we'll wrap up by talking about why culture is such a game changer for how we think about education. All right, let's jump in. To really get why this study's findings are so surprising, we first have to understand the problem that got the whole thing started. So, the whole reason this study exists is because of a really big problem. In a lot of developed countries, fewer and fewer students are choosing to go into science and tech. And look, this isn't just about grades. It's about the real world. It could mean we end up with a shortage of engineers, doctors, and scientists. This research is trying to figure out, what really motivates students and how we can maybe turn that trend around. So, how in the world do you even begin to research something like that? Well, what makes this study so powerful is its really smart design and the solid theories behind it. Let's break down how it was done. Basically, the researcher created a kind of roadmap to see how all these different ideas connect. The goal was to figure out how things like a student's personal beliefs and what drives them could actually predict how well they do in science and what they want to be when they grow up. And, of course, they made sure to factor in their family background, too. Okay, first, we got to get this term down, self-efficacy. Now, this isn't just about being confident in general. It's super specific. It's that feeling of, yeah, I can do this specific thing, like solving a really tough physics problem. And the idea is that belief is what pushes you to actually try. Now, the main theory driving this whole study is called self-determination theory. And it's all about the why behind your motivation. Are you learning science just because you think it's cool and you love it? That's intrinsic motivation. Or are you doing it because you know it'll help you get a great job later? That's what the study calls instrumental motivation, which is a type of extrinsic drive. So who did they look at? The study uses data from the huge PISA 2015 survey with over 12,000 15-year-olds. And here's the brilliant part, the choice of countries. Finland and Japan. Both are top performers in science, year after year. But their cultures, they couldn't be more different. And that difference is what sets up this perfect natural experiment. Okay, so what happened when they ran the numbers? This is where it gets really interesting. The results showed some things that were exactly the same in both countries, and one massive difference that changes everything. First, let's talk about what they had in common. Turns out, in both Finland and Japan, the number one thing that predicted how well a student did in science and whether they wanted a science career was intrinsic motivation. In other words, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, loving what you're learning is the most powerful driver. But now for the big twist. In Finland, self-efficacy, that belief in your own skills, was a huge predictor of success, right behind that love for the subject. But in Japan, its direct impact was pretty much zero. A student's personal belief in their own ability didn't seem to have any connection to their science scores or their career plans. How weird is that? And if you're a visual person, this chart just says it all. Look at that bar for Finland. It shows a really strong, positive connection between self-belief and science scores. But for Japan, that connection completely disappears. I mean, this one finding really makes you question if self-efficacy is this universal key to success we've always thought it was. So why? Why would a core psychological idea like self-efficacy be so important in one high-achieving country, but not in another? Well, the study argues that the answer isn't in the students themselves, but in the cultures they grow up in. The paper explains this using a framework of cultural values. See, Finland is a great example of a Western European culture that really prizes individual curiosity and thinking for yourself. Japan, on the other hand, comes from a Confucian tradition that puts more emphasis on social structure, tradition, and this idea of embeddedness, of being part of a group. And that leads us to this absolutely critical idea called interdependent self-construal. It's a mouthful, I know.
But as the author points out, in cultures like Japan's, your sense of who you are isn't just defined by your own personal traits. It's built through your relationships and your role in your social circles.
So here's the light bulb moment. For a Japanese student, their own personal confidence might just be less important than making sure they're meeting the expectations of their family, their teachers, and their friends. This cultural lens helps explain why that individual's self-belief just doesn't pack the same punch when the self is seen as part of a larger whole.
Okay, so what do we do with all this information? Let's zoom out and think about what this means for educators, for psychologists, and for anyone interested in how we learn.
Okay, a few big takeaways here. First, no matter what, helping students find genuine joy in science is a win. Second, don't just toss self-efficacy out the window. The study found that even in Japan, it was still important, but indirectly, because students with higher self-belief also had more of that crucial intrinsic motivation. But here's the biggest lesson, and it's a huge wake-up call for psychology. A lot of our main theories come from what researchers call weird societies: Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. This study is a massive reminder that these ideas don't always apply everywhere. Culture is not just some minor detail, it's a fundamental part of the equation. And that leaves us with this final, really important question. We have these big international tests like PISA, and they're super valuable. But if the path to success is totally different depending on your culture, what does that mean for our one-size-fits-all approach? If we design our global standards based on just one cultural model, are we missing the point for millions of students? This study makes a powerful case that if we really want to understand learning, we have to start by understanding culture.